This video is sponsored by Surfshark VPN. By the mid-1800s, the world was changing radically. For the first time ever, colossal factories spewed smoke from towering chimneys, casting shadows across sprawling urban landscapes. The once tranquil countrysides now resonated with the rumbling roars of steam engines, their iron tracks forging a path of progress through lush rolling hills. People from the rural villages migrated to bustling cities, drawn by opportunities and dreams ignited by the dawn of a new industrial era. The Industrial Revolution was fundamentally altering the way humans engage with and ultimately dominated the Earth. However, despite the breakneck pace of progress, one daunting problem threatened to wipe out all these advancements. The booming population and shift from small-scale subsistence farming to large-scale industrial agriculture led to an alarming erosion of the farmlands and a sharp decline in its productivity. Plants require only a few essential components to support the foundation of any nation and its economy: the food we consume. Carbon dioxide, water, and sunlight are relatively abundant and renewable. But two crucial elements, nitrogen and phosphorus, take geological timeframes to replenish when used up. Societies throughout history have cleverly used methods like crop rotation, utilizing plants that form symbiotic relationships with nitrogen-producing microbes, adjusting soil acidity with certain clays and rocks, and applying common manure. Yet, by the mid-1800s, these traditional practices fell short. As urban populations swelled, the demand for large-scale monocrop farming became critical for not only the continuance of progress, but in sustaining the now sprawling cities. But soil productivity plummeted after just a few harvests under this new system. And combined with centuries of farming practices that eroded the topsoil, the issue was becoming increasingly dire. In a striking example, a study from upstate New York revealed that farms yielding 30 bushels of corn in 1775 were producing a mere 8 bushels by the 1830s, which was only set to decline further. With no apparent solution, it seemed the grand experiment of industrialization and urbanization would flounder alongside our dwindling fertile lands, or worse yet, would lead to mass starvation. But then, a miraculous discovery on the other side of the world changed everything. Just a modest application of a newfound substance to fields would instantly rejuvenate them, yielding harvests that exceeded even their initial bounty. Wars were waged, empires were built and sustained, and humanity was able to transcend our ecological limits all because of it. It's quite possible that this substance enabled your ancestors' birth and consequently yours as well. This is the astonishing and strange tale of how bird shit changed the course of history. In our exploration of economic history on this channel, we have discovered that access to information and robust security are critical in driving a nation's prosperity and growth. Likewise, as individuals navigating the digital world, we face similar challenges as our online freedom and security are constantly under threat. From authoritarian regimes suppressing vital information to cybercriminals poised to steal your personal data and big corporations tracking and profiting from your online footprint, it's essential to remain vigilant and safeguard your digital identity. That's why I'm excited to announce Surfshark VPN, the sponsor of today's video. Surfshark is your ultimate online guardian, ensuring privacy and security by encrypting your online activity, blocking malware attacks, and even protecting your data when using public Wi-Fi networks you can't trust. What's more, by allowing you to change your IP address, Surfshark not only provides additional protection, but also grants you unrestricted access to critical information on everything from historical archives to shows that might be blocked in your country. If you believe in the power of information for making informed decisions and shaping correct opinions, Surfshark is the tool for you. So use my exclusive code CASUALSCHOLAR to get an extra 3 months for free, and there's a 30-day money-back guarantee so you can try it risk-free. Just click the link in the description below and experience true online freedom with Surfshark VPN. In 1799, Prussian geographer Alexander von Humboldt embarked on a journey to South America with a goal to observe the transit of Mercury across the Sun in order to pinpoint the exact location of the Peruvian capital city of Lima. In between his celestial observations, Humboldt would spend his time strolling along the dockyards. On one such occasion, he noticed ships unloading vast quantities of a yellow-brown substance so vile in its smell that it caused him to break out into a sneezing fit. After conversing with the locals, they told him that it was bird droppings, called guano, which they had been collecting from the nearby Chincha Islands. They described for him its remarkably potent effects as a fertilizer. Yet Humboldt doubted its avian origin, as the sheer quantity and its cement-like consistency was unlike anything he saw before. However, as it turns out, the unique conditions off Peru's coastline provide the absolute perfect conditions for such a substance to form, and in massive quantities. An ocean current originating from Antarctica, later named after Humboldt himself, transports cold and nutrient-rich waters from the ocean floor to the Peruvian coastline, fostering the world's most prolific marine ecosystem. This ecosystem sustains enormous schools of anchovies, packed full of nitrogen and phosphorus, that in turn feed millions of coastal birds that inhabit numerous tall volcanic islands where they deposit their guano. The mighty Andes Mountains that run up the spine of Peru results in the islands experiencing almost no rainfall, and when coupled with the intense heat, the guano is sunbaked and solidified instead of being washed away like it is in other parts of the world. Over centuries, these deposits build up to astounding heights, reaching up to 300 feet tall, appearing more like snow-capped mountains than towering piles of fecal matter. Yet the Peruvian guano was not a recent discovery. Archaeological evidence suggests the islands have been mined for their guano by the indigenous peoples for up to 2,000 years, and more recently, it played a critical role in the construction and the sustaining of the Inca Empire and its population of 12 million people. In fact, guano was so important to the Incas that anyone who killed a guano-producing bird or set foot on the islands during the breeding seasons faced execution. Although the Spanish discovered guano during their New World conquests, their focus on exploiting the native population for gold and silver extraction overshadowed its significance, preventing the knowledge from spreading beyond the region. As a result, the decline of the Inca Empire nearly led to the complete loss of this valuable information. Fascinated by the properties of guano, Humboldt wasted no time in bringing samples back to Europe and distributing them among prominent chemists. Upon further examination, these experts soon recognized the incredible potential of this remarkable substance. They found that guano contained 40 times more nitrogen and 20 times more phosphorus than normal manure. Numerous studies thereafter demonstrated an astounding 300 to 400% increase in crop yields, and even more on fields depleted of their nitrogen. As samples were given out to farmers, the effects were so immense that it actually sparked fear that the new enormous crops would deplete the farmlands of all their productive elements. Despite the initial excitement surrounding guano, its widespread adoption faced several challenges, including the logistical complexities of long-distance shipping and the disruptions caused by the Napoleonic Wars and Latin American Wars of Independence. This all started to change with the arrival of the whaling industry along South America's Pacific coast, which often resulted in trade imbalances as ships returned to Europe only partially filled. Seizing this opportunity, a group of Peruvian politicians and businessmen collaborated with a British merchant house to establish the very first shipment of guano from the Chincha Islands to Britain. In 1841, the Bonanza set sail carrying 2,000 tons of valuable guano, subsequently unloading the putrid substance in Liverpool, ushering in the start of the guano age that would inadvertently change the course of history. In December 1862, a squadron of 8 Peruvian military vessels embarked on a 2,400-mile journey southwest, setting course for the remote Easter Island. Upon arrival, 80 men disembarked and assembled the island's inhabitants to showcase an array of trade goods. However, the situation took a dark turn as the men revealed their firearms and began to forcefully round up nearly all able-bodied men. This ruthless operation included the capture of all priests, the chief, and the crown prince. Many of those who evaded capture chose to hurl themselves off cliffs into the ocean, or were tragically shot dead. The 1,000 individuals who were captured, representing a third of the island's total population, were forcibly transported to the Chincha Islands to endure grueling and inhumane labor conditions. They worked 120-hour weeks under the scorching sun, loading up to 5 tons of guano onto ships daily. The process generated clouds of guano dust, leading to bleeding lips and noses, numerous fatal respiratory diseases, and infestations of ticks from guano birds. The workers' shelters were inadequate, their meager food rations often consisted of maggot-infested rice, and many succumbed to scurvy due to a lack of vitamin C. A staggering 90% of the Easter Island workers perished while on the Chincha Islands. Their treatment was so brutal that France, the United States, and Great Britain, all beneficiaries of the guano trade, lodged complaints prompting the Peruvian government to return the survivors. Of the 100 individuals sent back to Easter Island, 85 died during the voyage from smallpox. The remaining 15 inadvertently spread the disease to the rest of the island's population, nearly wiping them out. This tragic event partially explains why the language and history of Easter Island and its famous statues remain undeciphered today. All of this represented Peru's final desperate attempt to coerce and exploit workers for the islands that had become central to its economy. The exploitation began with enslaved black individuals, continued with convicts, and eventually targeted 30,000 Chinese people seeking to escape a century of war, poverty, and famine in their homeland. These workers were lured with the false promises of an 8-year contract to mine gold in California. Instead, they found themselves enslaved and stranded on the sun-scorched, putrid Chincha Islands. Tragically, exhaustion, disease, and suicide claimed the lives of 35 to 40% of these workers during their time on the islands. The relentless stream of ships these workers filled positioned the guano trade at the heart of the industrial world. In just over a decade following the first shipment, Britain was importing over 300,000 tons annually, while the US imported an additional 170,000. Guano had become the 19th century equivalent of oil in terms of its significance for a nation's power, enabling countries with access to it to transform and revolutionize their agricultural industries. Between 1840 and 1880, the United States was able to increase wheat output per acre from 13 to 20 bushels on average, while across-the-board agricultural productivity in Britain surged by an astounding 40%. Guano combated the erosion of farmland nutrients, drove down costs, increased the available food per person, effectively supported the growing populations, and ultimately spurred massive economic growth. Unsurprisingly, the world became fixated on securing more and more Peruvian guano, which was in such high demand that British officers stationed on the Chincha Islands reported witnessing hundreds of ships from various nations surrounding the islands, waiting up to 8 months at a time to obtain a single shipment. For Peru, this was game-changing. Since independence, the country had been struggling with the aftermath of colonialism, facing a lack of functioning infrastructure, crippling national debt, and the threat of bankruptcy, all compounded by a divided political system on the verge of disintegration. Between 1821 and 1845, Peru experienced 5 different constitutions and 50 presidents, all while searching hopelessly for a viable path toward economic development. The guano industry appeared at precisely the right time, flooding the nation with cash and becoming its largest source of revenue almost overnight. The government subsequently nationalized the industry, and unlike many other resource-rich Latin American countries, it managed to capture an impressive 60% of final sales. Within just 12 years of selling guano, Peru paid off all its foreign debts, abolished its antiquated head tax on indigenous citizens, and emancipated its 25,000 black slaves. The nation undertook massive infrastructure projects, including railroads traversing the formidable Andes Mountains, while roads and telegraph lines began to crisscross the country. The cityscapes were transformed with the development of majestic boulevards, well-maintained parks and public squares, while opulent mansions and buildings showcased the upper class's growing affluence. New schools and universities began to appear in major cities, and immigrants, engineers, and entrepreneurs flocked to the country, transforming the capital into a cosmopolitan oasis well connected with the modern world. This striking metamorphosis visually emphasized the profound impact of guano revenue on Peru's prosperity, at least on the surface. Between 1840 and 1880, Peru sold 14 million tons of guano, generating an estimated $2 billion in today's currency, and accounting for 57% of the nation's entire economic output. This immense profit was a result of the Peruvian government collaborating with the British to exploit their guano monopoly, driving prices to their maximum potential. The initial price was a modest 7 cents per ton, but just 7 years later, it had soared to a staggering $76. This strategy, however, would have significant and far-reaching consequences, especially for the United States. On September 14, 1889, a group of African-American workers mining guano and tricalcium phosphate on the small Caribbean island of Navassa revolted against the deplorable conditions they had been deceived into enduring. By the end of the uprising, 5 white supervisors were dead. The workers were subsequently tried for murder in Baltimore, and following the Supreme Court's ruling that Navassa fell under American jurisdiction, they were sentenced. This seemingly inconsequential ruling had far-reaching implications, marking the official beginning of the United States as an empire. But why was Navassa even considered part of the United States? After all, it was merely an uninhabited island claimed by Haiti, with nothing more than bird droppings. The answer lies in the growing unease of the United States regarding Peru's domination of such a critical resource. The issue of guano became so important to the United States and its agricultural sector that President Millard Fillmore began his State of the Union address in 1850 by stating, "Guano has become such a desirable article for the agricultural interests of the United States that it is the duty of the government to employ all means properly within its power to ensure the importation of this article into the country at a reasonable price." 6 years later, in a stunning decision, the United States enacted the Guano Islands Act, which presented every single American citizen with a truly ludicrous opportunity: the audacious chance to assert ownership over an island abundant with guano on behalf of the United States. The only caveat was that the island must not have been claimed by another nation or be inhabited by human beings. This seemingly inconspicuous legislation, with its roots in guano, laid the groundwork for something far greater, a pursuit that may have seemed like fantasy before. The United States now had the legal foundation for an empire, forever reshaping the nation's geopolitical landscape. In the following years, the United States claimed approximately 100 guano islands. Although the guano mined from these islands was relatively small in quantity and of lower quality than Peruvian guano, these islands served as a catalyst for the United States to claim larger populated territories, including Hawaii, Cuba, Puerto Rico, Guam, and the Philippines, making the United States the 5th largest empire on Earth. Some of the Guano Islands went on to play significant roles in the 20th century as military bases, including Midway, Johnston, and Palmyra Atolls, and Baker and Howland Islands. These strategic locations proved critical in the United States' efforts to defeat the Japanese during World War II. Yet ultimately, the Guano Islands Act serves as a remarkable testament to the extent that nations were willing to go in order to secure new sources of nitrogen and phosphorus, an issue that was on the brink of becoming significantly more pressing. By the 1870s, the world, and specifically Peru, faced another looming crisis. The guano reserves on the Chincha Islands were rapidly depleting. The mining process had not only decimated the guano bird population, with miners even resorting to consuming the birds, but the centuries-old deposits were also being exhausted at a rate far quicker than they could naturally replenish. Peru's government, characterized by a series of short-lived, corrupt, and opportunistic administrations, had become increasingly reckless with its spending. they allocated 53% of guano revenue to expanding unnecessary government bureaucracy, 27% on economically unviable and expensive railroads, and 19% on servicing massive debts it was quickly taking out from European banks, eventually leading to Peru having the highest foreign debt of any Latin American country on record. The government had failed to diversify the economy. Guano profits, instead of benefiting the broader population, disproportionately flowed to a small elite section of society, and all the revenue had been blown on vanity projects to make Peru appear more affluent than it actually was. Yet most devastating to the nation, by inflating guano prices so dramatically, they inadvertently encouraged other nations to seek alternatives. One such alternative discovered was sodium nitrate, found in the Atacama Desert not far from the Chincha Islands. But as the global economic recession of the 1870s hit, guano prices plummeted, and European capital markets refused to continue lending to the debt-ridden Peruvian government. Peru was now facing the prospect of a complete economic collapse. In a desperate attempt to address the crisis, the government ordered the military to seize the nitrate fields along the Chilean border, hoping to establish a new monopoly to offset the diminishing guano profits. This move, however, provoked Chile to invade Bolivia for its nitrate fields, and as a result of a mutual defense treaty with Bolivia, Peru was preemptively attacked as well. Boasting a superior navy, Chile successfully occupied both nations, annexing Bolivia's coastline and the valuable nitrate fields of the defeated countries. In the aftermath, Peru found itself back at square one, with no clear economic path forward and burdened once again by heavy debts to the British. The country faced bankruptcy for the second time in its brief history. The squandered guano opportunity left behind a legacy of a superficially wealthy urban elite, an impoverished rural population, and a fragmented society whose effects continue to haunt the nation to this very day. As the age of guano drew to a close, sodium nitrates proved to be an effective and affordable alternative in the short term, enriching Chile much like guano had temporarily enriched Peru. However, since the very first shipment of guano to Liverpool in 1841, chemists had embarked on a quest to find the holy grail of nitrogen generation, synthesizing it from the air we breathe, which is composed of 78% nitrogen. This pursuit became increasingly urgent at the turn of the 20th century, as it was estimated that Chilean sodium nitrate reserves would also be depleted within a generation. A disastrous prospect, as it was now supporting nearly 800 million people worldwide. But it was in 1913, amid the turmoil of the First World War, that the monumental breakthrough occurred. Utilizing a groundbreaking catalytic process invented by chemist Fritz Haber, a German factory successfully synthesized ammonia, which finally unlocked the potential for producing nearly limitless and affordable synthetic fertilizer. It is estimated that this method currently sustains the lives of over 4 billion people today, making it arguably the most important discovery in modern history. Guano's remarkable impact on agriculture and the global economy galvanized scientists and entrepreneurs to pursue innovative solutions to meet the surging demand for nitrogen and phosphorus, tackling one of the most significant challenges of the 19th century. However, it is vital to acknowledge that guano's legacy transcends its role as a catalyst for agricultural revolution. From rescuing the industrial world to the tragic fate of those enslaved to mine it, from the bankruptcy of nations to the birth of new empires, and from the unearthing of precious resources to the wars they incited, the story of guano stands as a cautionary tale. It demonstrates how the pursuit of progress in problem solving can inadvertently lead to environmental degradation, human exploitation, geopolitical strife, and ultimately far-reaching unforeseen consequences. This strange narrative reminds us that the consequences of our actions echo through generations, shaping the course of history in ways both transformative and unpredictable, even if it all begins with the unassuming discovery of the remarkable properties of bird poop. Remember to check out Surfshark today by clicking the link in my description.